the United States Congress coming at Carnival Corporation, and they're coming hard. In today's episode of the Lido Loca Cruise Show, we'll break down that letter that Congress sent Mr. Arnold Donald, CEO of Carnival Corporation, and spoiler alert, it's not nice. It's just not nice. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Lido Loca Cruise Show. I'm your host, Tony. If you enjoy cruise and travel content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. Well, it's what every business owner dreams of. You're trying to keep your business afloat. You're trying to secure money. You're trying to come up with procedures for reopening. And on top of that, you open up your mailbox. I'm sure it came a different way. You open up your mailbox and you got a letter from the Congress. Yeah, that's what Carnival Corporation's dealing with, and this letter is a scorcher. So, let's just jump into the letter and see what it's all about. Okay, so here we go. This letter was sent out May the 1st, Friday, May the 1st, yesterday, from the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure in the U.S. House of Representatives. A very official-looking letterhead here. Again, I've never read one of these congressional letters. It's so official, as it should be, addressed to Mr. Arnold Donald, the CEO of Carnival Corporation. This Carnival Corporation owns multiple cruise lines, 9 cruise lines. So this is not to Carnival Cruise Lines. This is to the holding company where Mr. Donald is the boss. I will read some sections because I feel like there is some impact in hearing these words out loud. Pretty interesting. Again, the thesis right off the bat is there should have been a better preparation because of norovirus, which we could debate that because, the CDC has pointed out that more norovirus happens on land than on cruise ships. There are some notable cases of norovirus on cruise ships. But that becomes somewhat the premise of this letter. But here we go. Long before the COVID-19 pandemic began to race around the world, affecting local communities, churches, cities, homes, hospitals, and cruise ships sailing at sea, the cruise industry had a problem managing, containing, and responding to public health outbreaks. During a Caribbean cruise on the Oasis of the Seas in January 2019, which departed from Port Canaveral, 592 passengers and crew fell ill with norovirus. Described by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, as an ultra-contagious gastrointestinal illness. The CDC said that this was more than the total number of passengers who fell ill from the norovirus on every cruise that set sail in 2018. Kaiser Health News reported the CDC identified Oasis of the Seas incident as one of 10 norovirus outbreaks on cruise ships last year. According to the CDC, half of the cruise lines that had norovirus outbreaks in 2019 were Carnival Corporation owned ships. Boom. That is the opening salvo, but right here, even in the opening salvo, it's crazy. So, Oasis of the Seas had a notable norovirus outbreak that was larger than anything that happened in 2018. So, whatever safety protocols that were in place that were containing the norovirus in 2018 apparently worked, but you have this one incident on Oasis of the Seas, and now all of a sudden, those protocols are not good. To me, the logic's already falling apart. But I'm biased. Look, I'm biased. I'll try to keep it as unbiased as possible. But I do struggle with the fact that tying the response to COVID-19 is akin to how you deal with norovirus because they're different from a transmission perspective. And okay, that's a whole nother thing. All right, norovirus and other communicable diseases are not new. See, here we go. To the cruise line industry. And, basically they're going to go on to make the case that because you knew that the communicable diseases happen on cruise ships, you should have done a better job with this one. This is I think it's a 4-page letter. Again, I'll try not to read the whole thing. I'll leave a link to this so that you can read the whole thing. It's an interesting read, but really the gist of it is, they want to talk to Carnival. They want information from Carnival. I don't know if there'll be hearings yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are hearings. This is interesting, too. So on March the 23rd, 2020, CDC reported that the Diamond Princess, with 328 Americans on board, the Grand Princess, which docked in the United States, had more than 800 total COVID-19 cases, including 10 deaths. but both are operated by Princess, which is owned by Carnival. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases on those two ships are more than all of the confirmed cases in the states of Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Alaska, or Hawaii as of April 22nd. So here's the next big interesting leap in the argument. Diamond Princess was in Japan. You remember that was the first cruise ship that really struggled with this. There was some question how to deal with it. Should you bring the passengers off and quarantine them, or should you leave them all there together with the virus that they didn't really know how it worked at the time in the world? The only really places that it was popping off was in China, and there wasn't a lot of information coming out on how to deal with it. So they left all those people on the Diamond Princess. A lot of people got the virus. But the big leap here, 800 total cases, more than some of the least populated states in the country: Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Alaska, and Hawaii. So they didn't throw like New York in here, which has way more than 800 cases, or any of the hot spots. They just cherry picked the not very many case states to make their point that more came off of the ship than these states. This frustrates me from an argumentative perspective because it's disingenuous. While accurate, it's disingenuous. Cruise ships are a fertile breeding ground for infectious disease due to their environmental conditions and physical structures. Cruise ship passengers spend prolonged periods in close proximity to other passengers and crew, facilitating the rapid spread of highly infectious agents such as influenza, as reported in the Journal of Travel Medicine in 2018. CDC warns cruise ships are often settings for outbreaks and infectious diseases because of their closed environment contact between travelers, and for many countries. I don't disagree with this. We have talked about it before. Cruise lines, because of close proximity, yes, they will promote the spread of virus, and cruise lines have worked through that for years. Statistically, outbreaks on cruise ships not as blown out of the water as they are listed here. Millions of people have cruised without any kind of outbreak, but yes, every once in a while there are stories of norovirus, stories of the flu. People have gotten Legionnaires on the cruise ships. You can go look those numbers up and compare them to the numbers of people that have cruised without incident, and those numbers are statistically small. It's one of those deals that because they exist, do you shut the whole thing down, or is it a mitigation of risk? Every business goes through that process. But again, what they're saying is true. In the perfect storm, with a virus that spreads easily because of close proximity, it spreads on cruise ships. But to be fair, what we found from this virus, it tends to spread everywhere. It's not spreading because of cruise ships. Cruising's basically been stopped for the last 7 weeks, and case numbers still are going up all over the world. This did not originate on a cruise ship. So these first few paragraphs, again, this is setting the stage, and the big finale here, the big drum roll. Our committee, the U.S. Congress, and the American public need to be assured that the global cruise line industry and Carnival Corporation and PLC in particular are instituting necessary measures to ensure that the safety of the traveling public and crew members will be your number one priority when your ships set sail again. While cruises are often viewed as a carefree escape from reality where passengers can dine, dance, relax, and mingle, we would hope that the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic will place a renewed emphasis on public health and passenger safety. But frankly, that has not been seen up to this point. In fact, it seems as though Carnival Corporation and its portfolio of 9 cruise lines, which represent 109 cruise ships, is still trying to sell this cruise line fantasy and ignoring the public health threat posed by coronavirus to potential future passengers and crew. So basically they're saying that the Carnival's ignoring what's going on with COVID. Now, the reality is the Cruise Line International Association, CLIA, that represents the cruise line, working closely with the CDC, working closely with the cruise lines to develop health protocols for when cruising starts again. That's been talked about ad nauseum. You can look at any of the commentators here on YouTube. You can look at any news outlet, and you can see the interaction that's going on between the CDC, CLIA, cruise lines. And so, again, this rings a little hollow to me to say that the cruise lines are not look, if you just want to say that they're greedy or whatever, in that greed, they would have to care about public health, because if you don't care about public health, you'll destroy your business. And they're in a situation where they're trying to save their business, not destroy their business. So just from a survival perspective, the messaging about public health, genuine or disingenuous, would be there. But here's the reason why Congress is saying that Carnival doesn't care about public safety. As of April the 23rd, 2020, none of the front pages of any of Carnival's affiliated cruise line websites say anything about coronavirus. So the argument put forth here is because if the first thing, so like when you go to Carnival's website, if probably the first thing you see is book a cruise for X amount of dollars, because there's not a big virus warning on the front of it. Obviously, they do not care about public safety. That's the argument. And again, like, I feel like I'm being a little heavy-handed against this letter, and I'm being a lot pro-cruise line. I do believe the cruise line has to be held accountable for any mistakes that it made. I think this is definitely one of those crucible moments where now in this fire, in this challenge, they're going to have to come up with a better process. And the cruise line's one of the most, it's not a United States company, right? These companies are flagged in foreign countries. Their ships are flagged in foreign countries. These companies are incorporated in foreign lands, but they do submit to rules and regulations put forth by the United States. The CDC has the vessel sanitation program where they surprise inspect cruise lines for cleanliness, for sanitation, and they willfully do that. They willfully let the reporting go out. And so again, I'll defend the cruise line in this case, because some of these opening salvos in this argument, the cruise line doesn't care about public health. That's ridiculous. Is there going to be things that you could do better? That's going to be true for everybody affected by this pandemic. So I'll get off of the high horse and continue to work through it. There's a little more meat to this letter, but the big takeaways really is because cruise lines knew about norovirus and other virus outbreaks, could they have stopped the spread of coronavirus? That's one of them. And then because there are no mentions on Carnival websites of the COVID-19 on the front page, you have to look at their health. You have to look in the health area to hear about this because it's not on the front page. Now, all of a sudden, they don't care about coronavirus. That's some of the argument being put forth here. They also reference a book that was released 3 years before the outbreak that predicted that, cruise ships are not good for outbreaks. And did you read the book? How come you didn't implement any of these things? It's like saying all the people that touted that the next thing that really could cripple the economy would be an outbreak. How come we didn't listen to them? That language in there also. They also reference a recent report put forth by Bloomberg that suggests that officials at Carnival were aware of the threats to some of the ships and did not take appropriate actions, which may have led to greater infections and spread of the disease. Even a senior CDC official who leads the CDC Even a senior CDC official who leads the CDC's cruise ship task force was quoted as saying she had a hard time believing that Carnival was simply a victim of happenstance. It's interesting, right? So that's kind of the contention of the cruise line. They tracked along with what was going on with this pandemic, just like everybody else, watching what was happening in Asia, continuing to do business in the Caribbean, and taking the best data that they had to make decisions. This report here, this letter, is suggesting that maybe that's not true, that maybe Carnival knew more than they let on to, and that's what they got questions about. That's really what they're getting at. So that becomes the main push for the rest of the letter. Did Carnival know more than what they are letting on? And the way they're going to get at that is they're asking for a ton of information. Here on page 4, they set up why they have the authority to ask for this information. It's an interesting read if you're wondering why they can ask for this information from a company that's not incorporated in the United States, where ships aren't flagged in the United States. Here's the list of information they want, and they're only looking for information starting January the 1st, 2020. They want a copy of all of Carnival's fleet-wide outbreak prevention and response plans that were in effect at any time from January the 1st, 2020 onwards. This should include all individualized prevention prevention or response plans for specific infectious diseases such as norovirus and influenza, a copy of all COVID-19 coronavirus specific prevention and or response plan. This should include all drafts, all response plan. It should also include response plan that has been in place, well as future prevention and response plans that Carnival intends to implement when the no-sell order is lifted. So they want to know what particularly was in place when it happened and what will be in place going forward. All records discussing, referring to, or referencing COVID-19 from all employees at Carnival headquarters in Miami. This should include, but not be limited to, memos, action items, reports, health alerts, similar records. This request should also include correspondence, but not limited to letters, emails, text message, instant message, or any other communication modes to, from, between all employees at Carnival headquarters in Miami. Basically, they're asking for everything from cruises docking at U.S. ports. It's a huge information request that they're asking for. Again, I would suggest that you read through some of this. They also want to know if Carnival uses any code words for the virus. I know in the beginning, a lot of us had to use code words because we weren't necessarily able to talk about it freely on YouTube without that being a challenge to the YouTube algorithm. And so they want to know, Carnival, do you have any code words? And if so, we want the code word correspondence also. And then they close out, and just to frame it, they sent this letter on May the 1st. Carnival has till May the 15th to provide all this information. We appreciate your prompt attention to this matter. Please see the attachment for instructions regarding the preparation of these records. Please deliver one set of these records electronically to the majority staff and one to the minority staff. So a little politic in here. Got to send each side the records. We request that delivery of these records begin on May the 15th, 2020. We will consider a rolling production of these records if you're unable to fully complete this response by this date. However, for any date beyond May the 15th, your staff must coordinate a timeline with the committee staff. Sincerely yours, the government. Wow. All right, I'm going to jump out of this. Let's talk about it. So look, a couple things here. I do believe that it is important to ask the question of the cruise industry, what level of preparedness that you had, what was your response, and what will you do in the future? Those questions are already being asked on many levels. They're being asked by the CDC. They're being asked by the Coronavirus Task Force. They're being asked by CLIA. Those questions are being asked. Now, what worries me is the political process. We're moving into a time period where things are starting to open. Look, I don't really ever get political here. I'm not coming down on one side or the other. I'm just going to make a general statement here. It does seem like in time of crisis, there is a few phases. You go through the phase of trying to respond to the crisis, and then when it looks like things are getting better, then we move on to a different phase. It could be debated whether things are getting better, but there are things going on where the country's starting to open up again, and now it's time to figure out who's to blame. And I believe that this is like the opening thing in that there are a lot of industries that need to be looked at. I think the cruise line should be looked at, but at the same time, I don't think they should be scapegoated as the one industry that made the coronavirus worse for the world. That's just my opinion, right? And that's worthy of a debate. But there are a lot of other things to look at. But yes, so this definitely will be a challenge to Carnival Corporation. Watch those stocks on Monday. This came out late Friday. Friday was a day that was already challenging for the market as we saw Carnival, Norwegian, and Royal Caribbean all losing, I think, 10+% of their gains from the week. And now when the market opens on Monday, I would keep an eye on your Carnival stock, because anytime you get called to task, especially with this kind of heavy language, it's not great. It's not great for the public facing things like the stock market. And I don't know. What do you think? Like this, I know this is just going to be some sort of political time bomb where people are going to say, well, this side's doing this side. Strip it all down. Let's go just on the argument's sake. Do you believe that the cruise lines, because they had previous experience with norovirus, influenza, and other communicable diseases that spread, do you believe that they should have had a better response to COVID-19? I guess that's the question for the comments. I hope you found this interesting. This was super interesting to me. Again, I'll put the link to this letter in the first comment. I'll pin it there. I recently did do a video about another news source that were saying that you shouldn't cruise anymore because cruise lines are dirty. I would recommend that video to you, and YouTube thinks you should watch this one. I appreciate if you continue to watch our videos. Please show your support for the channel by hitting that like button. Thanks again. My name's Tony, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.